Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Rochester, Rafael dos Anjos versus Kevin Lee. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in New York. Two former lightweights up at welterweight, and the winner is going to be in that top five.
Man, between you and me, we know neither guy's going to be in the top five in the real scheme of things. But yeah, we know we get to see a former champion, Rafael dos Anjos. I mean, I always watch when that guy fights because, in my opinion, he's one of the most well-rounded guys to ever do it. The first Brazilian lightweight champion. I remember the run he went on to accomplish that. And it was quite a run, you know. He went up to 70, saw some early success, and then ran into the number one and number two guy at welterweight. So now he's fighting a funny guy, Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee, he's a character, and Kevin Lee, he's a guy that's always, had potential, and now he's moving up in weight. He had some rough weight cuts at 55, so let's see how he looks.
Man, I'm really excited for this fight. It's going to be a lot of fun while it lasts, but could you imagine if Kevin Lee won this fight, and then they put him in there with guys like Elizu Zaleski, Vicente, Luque, and the funny part here is that if Kevin wins this fight, he's going to be ranked ahead of Santiago Ponzinibbio, ahead of Vicente Luque, Elizu Zaleski, Robbie Lawler, all these guys. Could you imagine what would happen if he fought those guys, Shaq?
Well, yeah, that's the beauty of the game. We're gonna get to find out. He's got to beat Rafael dos Anjos first. Look, if he gets through this one, then he's fucked. But if he loses this one, he can somewhat salvage things and go back to 55s. But we'll see.
Yeah, and then in other news, I was really looking forward to that Vicente Luque versus Neil Magny fight. But as you guys probably heard, Neil Magny was on that dihydroxy. What's this shit called?
On that dihydroxy LGD 40-33, and he got caught red-handed.
It's so funny hearing people say that Neil's innocent. How do you know? You know the guy personally? Because how many times have you accidentally taken dihydroxy GHD 4033? You know what I'm saying? Look, all I got to say about that thing is, look, if any of my sponsored athletes, Jared Gooden, Emmanuel Sanchez, Robert King Hill, any of these guys test positive for dihydroxy GHD 4033, it's not going to be a pleasant phone call. I'm just telling you that. It'd be like, Shaq, let me ask you this. How often do you accidentally take dihydroxy GHD 4033, my man?
That just sounds like something you got to go seek out, Doesn't sound like something you can accidentally take.
And my boy Neil Magny accidentally bent over, accidentally got the needle in his ass.
Because he's skinny, he's innocent. Because he's a nice guy, he's innocent.
A nice guy that you don't even know. And the funny thing here is that when you look at that fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio, the biggest beatdown you've ever seen in your life, and we can just talk about the 4-round beatdown. We don't even got to talk about the faceplant KO. That just adds insult to injury. And then it's like, hey, guess what, Neil? We're not going to give you another Craig Y. We're not going to give you a Diego Sanchez. Here's Vicente Luque.
Originally, it was going to be Elijah. So, look, they're looking to set Neil up. He knows that this is probably the last fight of his in the top 15. Negotiations might be coming up soon. He needed an extra edge. Look, man.
Between you and me, as soon as he got that call to fight Elijah, he was already making phone calls to every doctor in Colorado, so... that's all it comes down to, man. I wish him the best. I hope he can fight it so we can fade him in his return very soon and not have to wait another 2 to 4 years. You know what I mean, Shaq?
Yeah, just take your 8-month suspension and let's book the Elijah fight.
And maybe you can get a better masking agent next time you want to take dihydroxy GHD 4033, my man. But let's break down this whole card start to finish, because first up in the featherweight division, we got Julio Arce. He's 15-3, and Julian Erosa is 22-7. Currently, Julio Arce is minus 730. The comeback on Julian Erosa is plus 515. Well, Shaq, I kind of understand why he's a big favorite. The question here is, do you think this line is warranted? Do you think there's a little value on the dog, or do you think Julio Arce should actually be a bigger favorite here?
Yeah, I feel like Arce is going to win this fight outright, no matter by any means necessary, man. I think that Julian Erosa is a low-level UFC fighter. I think that his first stint in the UFC, he got KO'd stiff, and then he worked his way back, won a fight on Contender Series against Emmers, a fight that, was very ugly, and, when he got to the UFC, he took a nap against King Cage, and then the fight with Dawson, he kind of fought a specialist, but he got 30-26. I just think Erosa's a low-caliber UFC fighter. I think this is probably his last fight in the company. I think Arce is better than him in every aspect of the game: cardio, striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. Erosa fights with his hands completely down. For a guy with no chin, he is very confident with fighting with his hands down. And, like I said, he's got no chin. So I see Arce coming out here and rolling through Erosa rather quickly, as long as he shows up. But even if he doesn't show up, I still think he wins the 15-minute battle, man. We saw Erosa's cardio his last fight. I think Arce's a lot more efficient. Yeah, he's coming off a loss to Shaman Moraes. Imagine what Shaman Moraes would do to Julian Erosa if they ever got locked in a cage.
Under 1.5 minutes?
So, I got Arce. And I do think it could be a bigger favorite,
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those fights where it was like, look, Julio, you've been super exciting. You beat all these guys like Dan Ige, who was really an emerging prospect, had that amazing fight with Shaman Moraes, beat Peter Pettis on Contender Series. Here's Julian Erosa on a silver platter, and I mean, basically, Julian Erosa, he hasn't evolved at all since his first UFC stint. They kick him out the UFC, he goes out there, gets knocked out by some 5-4 guy on the regional scene, wins a couple fights, wins that controversial decision over Paddy Pimblett, and now he's back, and it's time to take that third L in a row. I mean, look, Julian Erosa, for a guy that's 6'1", we talk about, hey, a 6'1" featherweight, what can this guy do? This is what he can do. He can leave his chin straight up in the air and his hands down, throws a bunch of uppercuts without setting them up, and there was a moment in that Grant Dawson fight, because Grant Dawson, he's a takedown specialist. He's a relentless wrestler. He takes you down 100 times every fight. Well, there was a point in that second round where Grant Dawson hit a fatigue wall, and it was like, Julian, this is your window of opportunity. Go get the guy real quick. And then Julian's throwing these uppercuts without setting him up, and then it's Julian that's getting rocked against a guy who has no striking whatsoever, and it's like, Julian, oh my God. The one thing he did nicely in that fight was, the first time he got taken down, he attacked for a triangle, and after that, he never did anything ever again. So, look, based on the technical aspect, Julio Arce, he fights with his hands up, he fights with his chin down, and people say he's chinny. Why? Because he got dropped by Shaman Moraes, one of the hardest hitters in the division. I don't think he's chinny at all. And one thing I really like about Julio Arce is, yeah, he can give it, you know what I'm saying? The guy can mix it to the body, the guy can go upstairs, he can wrestle, he can do jiu-jitsu, he can strike, but the kid can take it too, and that's a huge difference between him and Julian Erosa. So, I got Julio Arce via knockout here. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got Trevin Giles, he's 11-0, and Zach Cummings is 22-6. Currently, they got Trevin Giles, -160. The comeback on Zach Cummings is +140. Well, man, Trevin Giles is a dude that not only has he been beating everyone that's been put in front of him inside the UFC, but outside the UFC, beat guys like Ryan Spann, Brendan Allen. So now he's coming in here against Zach Cummings, the former welterweight. Who you got?
Yeah, this is going to be a step up for Trevin in comparison to his two UFC opponents, James Boshnovic, who, Trevin actually put that guy out on a stretcher, and then
literally
he put Boshnovic never recovered, and Boshnovic's a complete can, not UFC level, and then he fought Braganetto, who was coming off a 3-year layoff.
He's coming off a gambling problem.
And Braganetto, man, he's one of those jiu-jitsu guys that once he gets tired, he becomes a zombie, a punching bag, and Trevin was able to just jab his head off and eventually knock him out. He did get taken down a couple times. I've noticed that's something that he has struggled with in the past, and when he fought Ryan Spann, that fight could have went either way. Spann controlled him for the majority of that fight on the mat. But one thing about Trevin, man, he knows how to win. I would say that he's arguably a little green. He'll make up for it with the athleticism, and he's a winner, man. The guy knows what he has to do to win. For example, Spann's controlling him for the majority of the fight, but at the end of every round, when Spann would lose that back, Trevin would get up on the feet and just start teeing off, man. So this guy knows how to make up the points back. So he's a smart guy. Cummings, he's a tough guy. I kind of classify Cummins as one of just these rugged. He's a rugged white boy, man. He's he blocks punches with his head, and he's one of those guys that can take flush KO blows to the chin. I don't know what it is, but that's just what he does.
It's too bad him and Barb never happened at 170.
He can just take flush KO blows to the chin, no problem. And after all his fights, it looks like his one of his eyes are closed or his face is covered in blood. He's just a tough guy. And his jiu-jitsu, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. We saw him submit Yakovlev. I think he got another submission. Nathan Coy. So he's got some jiu-jitsu. He's a well-rounded fighter, a lot more experience than Trevin. But as far as how they match up, I see Trevin being the more athletic guy. I see Cummins' defense being a little lacking. But like I said, the guy's got a good chin he's going to rely on. If he wants to test that with Trevin, that's going to be interesting. But the thing in this fight is Trevin's chin is going to be tested too, because Cummins can hit, man. The guy, his fight with Trevor Smith, it was definitely an ugly fight. And Trevor Smith, does lose the majority of his fights. But, man, they were swinging hard in there, man. And like I said, Trevin, a lot of his fights, I don't want to say he's green, but there's still let's just say Cummins has got a lot more experience. So I think Trevin's the better athlete, so I'm going to pick him in this fight. I think he's a little younger, a little less damage taken. He's coming off a big layoff, which worries me. It's not a confident pick, but I'm going to go with Trevin.
This is a really interesting fight because Zach Cummings, ever since that fight with Ponzinibbio, I kind of felt like he took so much damage in that fight. But, he's one of these blockheads. Down the line, I want to see Zach Cummings versus Marvin Vittori. Let's see who can eat more shots to the face. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a lot of fun. But look, here with Trevin Giles, yeah, he's a little bit not green, but he's still developing. You know what I mean? But, man, he's the superior athlete here, a lot more physical. And at the end of the day, I just think he's got more left in the tank. So I actually do see him winning the step up in competition. And I got Trevin Giles for the victory as well. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Patrick Cummins. He's 10-6, and Ed Short Fuse Herman is 22-14. Currently, they got Patrick Cummins minus 255. The comeback on Ed Herman is plus 215. Shaq, you going with the guy that has one tooth, or are you going with my boy Ed Short Fuse Herman that lost to Volante and CB Dalloway?
Man, this is an interesting fight. So obviously, when you see Pat Cummins with a line that wide, you're like, whoa, what's the issue here? But I mean, look, Ed's kind of been having similar, scenarios like this. When he fought CB Dalloway, I think he was a similar line, plus 190, plus 200. And at the time, everyone was like, whoa, and he went out there and caught CB with some shots, but he got laid on and he couldn't handle that high Division I wrestling pace. Even with these guys like CB and Pat, even though they're old as fuck, Pat's 38, I think. KO losses to OSP, Cormier, Little Nog, Glover got finished in the first round by Serkinov.
Beat down by Corey.
He has taken some severe whoopings, but he beat Blachowicz and he beat Carlos Jr. and he beat Fejao. So look, he can wrestle. Look, no matter how old he is, if he can get into that type of grind, he's gonna be able to, at least against a guy like Ed, who doesn't like that wrestling pace. But Ed's best hope is to just catch him and hopefully knock him out, and that's a very good possibility. So I do think there's a little bit of value, but if this fight hits the second and third, I just don't know how you can expect Ed to be operating at a pace like Patrick Cummins' past opponents, man. We're talking Serkinov, who, even though he's not ranked, he's still a top 20 guy. Not Blachowicz, but
Volante.
Ed lost to Volante, but Cummins beat Volante, man. So it's a tough fight, but I'm going to go with Patrick. I think he'll wrestle, but he might get sparked unconscious.
Pat Cummins, man, he's working the coffee shop, then they give him a call, and 2 days later, you got to fight DC, and I feel like that's really set the tone for his entire career. Look, he's overperformed in some spots. He beat Antonio Carlos Jr., beat Jan Blachowicz, so he did a couple things, but it's kind of uncomfortable watching this guy fight because he takes so much damage, and it's just like, he's kind of tough, so he won't just go down right away. He'll keep trying to take more, and it's really hard to watch, man. And with Ed Herman, the guy is as slow as molasses. The guy's stuck in the mud in a way where, he's out here losing to CB Dalloway and shit, you know what I'm saying, to Volante, so it's embarrassing. But that being said, man, throughout his career, he's got 60% takedown defense, and one thing I noticed about Pat Cummins is even when he takes guys down, he doesn't really hold them down unless they're completely gassed, and that could be a possibility here, but I think it should be lined a little bit closer. I'm going to take Ed Herman via vicious KO here. Next up in the featherweight division, we got Mike Trizano. He's 8-0, and Grant Dawson is 13-1. Currently, they got Mike Trizano minus 130. The comeback on Grant Dawson is plus 110. Well, Shaq, you got the point fighter Trizano versus the relentless wrestler Grant Dawson. Which way are you going?
It's going to be a good fight. You got two young guys. Trizano, he's coming off that fight with Pena. It was a very good performance. Pena's a wrestler as well. Probably not as hell-bent as Dawson is, but he got taken out maybe once or twice, but he got back up. He attacked off his back, and he's a solid, typical Tiger showman, point fighter, well-rounded. The guy can wrestle. He's, I feel like his weakness is he might be a little bit too calm at times. Sometimes guys with that style, when they're fighting a hell-bent guy like Dawson, if he falls behind, it's kind of going to be hard for him to come back because he's so, like I said, a point fighter. He's not necessarily going to be throwing KO blows out there to come back. So Dawson, I feel like this fight is close to a pick'em for a reason. Dawson, he's a specialist, a takedown specialist, and I think he had a D1 scholarship to Nebraska, but he quit to do MMA. So, we're seeing those takedowns out here. It's going to be It's a tough fight. I agree with it kind of being close to pick'em, man, just because I respect that style. And Dawson, I mean, he clearly has a knack for getting takedowns, man. I'm sure the DraftKings guys love Grant Dawson. So, I do worry that if Trizano gets up, which he has shown in all of his fights that he can get up, Trizano has gotten taken down in pretty much all his fights, except maybe like one, including Tough. But when he gets back up, man, his point fighting is so sharp that these guys get frustrated, and then he makes them look really off balance. He makes them look really silly, and has them shooting from far away, kind of like Pena. It's going to be interesting, man. I feel like Dawson sets his takedowns up a lot better, but his striking is definitely nowhere near the level of Trizano, so it's a tough fight. I slightly lean Trizano, but I acknowledge, man, it could go the other way 100%, man. Dawson's got that wrestling, and you got an aggressor, a guy that's going to be pushing, tying up. He's going to be the aggressor in this fight, so he's got the clear path to victory. But I slightly lean Trizano. I think his striking's going to be too clean. I noticed that when Erosa kicked Dawson in the calves after they got up, he went to the floor. His calves didn't like it, and Trizano's got some really good calf kicks, so I'm going to go with Trizano.
Man, both guys are super talented at what they do. They both bring something very different to the table. Obviously, we already mentioned the point fighting of Mike Trizano and the relentless wrestling of Grant Dawson. So, I feel like first L time is coming for both these guys very soon. It's just about being able to capitalize in the right spot. And this fight specifically, well, look, man, we've seen John Gunther take down Trizano. We've seen Joe Giannetti take down Trizano. We've seen Luis Pena take down Trizano. Now, granted, he was able to get back up and beat all those guys, but with Grant Dawson, he might not have the wrestling credentials of some of these guys, but man, I can tell you what, for MMA wrestling, this kid will put guys on their butt over and over and over again. He can keep going. But man, it seemed like in that second round against Julian Erosa, maybe it was because he kicked his ass so badly in the first 7.5 minutes.
It's because he's not one of those just regular takedown guys that just want to lay in guard. He's the type of guy that has to pick you up, lift you up all up in the air, and you could run in the middle of the cage like Matt Hughes.
Yeah, he's got to do it. He's got to exaggerate with it. You know what I mean? So that could be a problem. If this hits the second round and Dawson ain't got the same win and Trizano starts getting off on some strikes. But the thing is, I want to see more urgency from Trizano. I want to see, once he starts getting back up in that second round, I want to see some vicious shots, some body shots, some big leg kicks. And I feel like he's too content to, pick and poke and have fun out there, look cute. So I see this being a super close fight. And like I said, I'm down to fade Dawson with the right opponent, because I know for a fact that when this guy starts to gas a little bit and you put him in there with someone like you put him in there with a guy like Sadiq Youssef, you put him in there with Matt Sales, you put him in there with Shaman, and you start to slow down a little bit, that's when you go out there, you take the guy out. But Trizano, man, he gets put on his back by way worse guys like my boy John Gunther. And no disrespect to Gunther. Look, Gunther beat King Cage. Gunther defended the first Davi Ramos choke attempt, so I got a lot of respect for that guy. But the reality here is I think Grant Dawson is a better wrestler. So I'm actually going to go with Dawson in this spot via split decision. But I think we can make talks about fading him very, very soon. But I'm going to take him to win this one just via more takedowns here. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. He's 16-4, and Michel Pereira is 22-9. Currently, they got Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts minus 255. The comeback on Michel Pereira is plus 215. Shaq, you think Michel Pereira is going to come out here, do a somersault off the fence and hammer fist Danny Hot Chocolate?
Hot Chocolate, I'm not too high on him just overall. I think he's he's ranked number 64 in the welterweight rankings. He's got a 500. He's a 500 fighter. Maybe slightly above 500. When you really look at his wins, we're talking Camp, not in the UFC. We're talking Dominique Steele, not in the UFC. We're talking Nathan Coy, not in the UFC. We're talking
Zawada
about to not be in the UFC. So Danny Hot Chocolate's just a serviceable guy, man. And then Pereira, he's 22-9. They say he's 25 years old. He looks a little older than that to me. But the somersaults and the jumping off the cage, the wannabe Showtime thing, it's cute and all, but, when you're fighting guys by the name of Hai Jun Kim and Soo Jin, and stuff like that, fat Japs with tennis shoes on there. Of course you can jump off the cage and do all that stuff, and it's good. But personally, I think just when you take all that stuff out the picture, what does he really have? I think he's just a tough Brazilian, you know. I think that he has been KO'd recently, maybe like early last year against it was at middleweight, but
well, it sounds like they have something in common then.
you know, so but you know, when we're talking about hot chocolate, man, this guy is very chinny. His cardio, I don't want to say is suspect, but the reason why he does get tired in his fights is because his striking, man, all he has is that jab overhand left, and he puts everything into it. That's why when he does get his KO, it's generally very vicious. And when he doesn't get his KO, his fights are really close. I mean, like I said, that fight with Zawada was very back and forth, and don't expect Zawada to win a UFC fight. And then, but I got to go with hot chocolate here, man. I just think he's got more experience. Like I said, Pereira's going to have to rely on something else than what he's been using to defeat those jabs down there. And I think hot chocolate should get the win as long as he doesn't get flashed. And I think that he'll probably get a late knockout here.
Man, so when I saw the highlights of Pereira, I was like, holy shit, you know, I mean, I called you right there. I was like, dude, this guy that does the somersaults off the cage and does hammer fists just got signed to the UFC. I was super excited, but then you actually watch those fights and not just the highlights, and it's like, man, that shit would not cut it in the UFC. Now, what's interesting about this fight is that since Danny Hot Chocolate has that suspect chin, maybe Pereira can land something flashy. Look, if Pereira wins by knockout, I'm not going to be surprised here because, like I said, every single person that's fought Hot Chocolate besides that fraud N-Camp has rocked him.
Yeah, Luque rocked him too.
You know, between you and me, N-Camp rocked him too. So, but look, that being said, man, I just, it's hard to gauge how Pereira is going to perform in the UFC. Like Shaq said, the level of competition he's been fighting is abysmal. The scene he comes from is not the best, and the moves he does don't seem like they'd be efficient inside the octagon. So that being said, unless he catches Danny Hot Chocolate here, I do not see Michel Pereira winning a long-term battle. It's KO or bust. So, and that's possible. Danny Hot Chocolate, like we said, man, the dude is beyond chinny.
He got 215 for a KO against a chinny guy. So
you know what I'm saying? So if you don't want to take that shot, I understand why. But all I got to say is if he does not win by knockout, you're going to be like, oh my God, Michel. He's going to start flopping to his back. You know, he's going to start doing the whole bit. So, best of luck to you guys. I got Danny Hot Chocolate. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Dez the Predator Green. He's 22-8, and Charles Air Jourdain is 9-1. Currently, they got Dez Green minus 650. The comeback on the former TKO champ Charles Air Jourdain is plus 475. Well, Shaq, I understand Dez being favored here over the newcomer. You know how these short notice opportunities have been going lately. But do you agree with him being minus 6'5" in this spot?
Green, he finally performed the way he should have his last fight for once against Ross Pearson.
Against the retired guy?
Against who ended up retiring. But, you know, I mean, in the past with Gleison Tebow, man, he's getting caught with left hands and shit. So, look, I don't think my thoughts on Dez Green have changed. I understand why he's high because they just think he's going to outright win this fight no matter what. But Charles Jourdain's no slouch. Yeah, he's a featherweight, but, man, the kid's scrappy. He can strike. Dez Green, yeah, he's a Division I wrestler. I think he's a Division I conference champion at Buffalo. And he doesn't really use his wrestling as much as he should. He does at times. Yeah, he was fighting the Tyson models of the world and the tractors of the world, so he's definitely seen a level of the sport that Charles Jourdain could only dream of, man. But man, I feel like from a betting perspective, it's definitely dog or pass because this ain't Ross Pearson. You know, if you're going based off that, you know what I'm saying? The kid's a featherweight. I mean, look, he's fought lightweights. He's knocked lightweights out before his last two fights. So we'll see what the kid's got. I'm gonna take Dez Green by split decision. I think he's gonna give all you guys a scare that put your accounts on him, and I think he's gonna struggle to pull the trigger a little bit against this kid. And I think that, you know, with that hometown pressure of fighting in Rochester, I think this is his hometown. Look, we saw what happened in Brazil the other day, man. When you're fighting in that hometown, when you got mommy, auntie, you know, all the kids, little sister out there, man, and they all asking for tickets and stuff, man, you could kind of lose focus. And then when you step in that cage, you might be this is definitely gonna be one of, for Dez, from Dez's perspective, this is gonna be one of those play it safe fights. He's gonna get in there and be like, oh my God, I can't lose to this kid because who the fuck is he? And if I lose to this guy, my career's over. So expect Des to struggle to pull the trigger, and I think Jourdain's going to give a lot of people scares. But I'll take Des by controversial split in his hometown, even though he's a guy that generally loses controversial splits.
Yeah, look, there was a fight recently between Nordine Taleb and Kyle Prepolek, and I feel like people kind of think this is that same situation, and it might be. I mean, look, maybe Des Green goes out there, gives him the vet lesson, but man, this kid Jourdain is no slouch at all. He's very aggressive. He's very confident. He's well-rounded. I know the one area of his game that he kind of had issues with in the past was his takedown defense, but man, the kid seems like he scrambles back up to his feet. He's also super young. He's only 23 years old. He's just a kid, so he's been paying his dues for a while. And I just love the kid's attitude. I love the fact that he comes to fight. You start to slow down on a guy like Air Jourdain, and all of a sudden he's throwing flying kicks at you. He's throwing spins. I mean, the guy is very, very dynamic, very exciting. With Des Green, look, I mean, you got to give him the edge here. The guy has paid his dues. Not only that, he's got the judges on his side in this one. I mean, Rochester, New York, if this is a close fight, they're
went his way last time.
They're going to give this split to Des Green in New York. You know what I'm saying? But if you're out here laying minus 6.5 on Des Green thinking that this is about to be some first-round finish because he beat Ross Pearson, who is retired, you might have another thing coming because this kid, Charles Jourdain, is no slouch, like I said. So I'm going to pick Des via decision here, but this is a dog or pass situation. I do not view this like the Julio Arce fight or, some of the other big favorites on this card. I feel like if one big favorite's going to fuck it up, it might be my boy Des Green. Don't put it past him. I mean, he lost to Kurt Holloway. Don't forget about that. But, yeah, I got Des via majority decision here.
No guy that lost, though.
Next up in the bantamweight division, we got Aspen Ladd. She's 7-0, and Sijara Eubanks is 4-2. Currently, they got Aspen Ladd minus 310. The comeback on Sijara Eubanks is plus 255. Well, Shaq, I know you saw their first fight. It seemed a lot closer than minus 310 and plus 255. Do you think that this time Aspen Ladd gets a clear lead, or think it's going to be close again?
Man, this is a good fight, and I'll go ahead and say I do think it could be line closer. Look, they got Sarge at plus 255. Her losses are to Chuk and Aspen. And one thing that didn't happen, the only girl that didn't get fully mounted and smashed on by Aspen was Sijara Eubanks. They went 3 rounds. Aspen had to outwork her. I think Aspen might have been 4-0. Sijara was like 2-1. She was training at Lloyd Irvin. This is pre-Tough, pre-Mark Henry, Ricardo Almeida. So I think Sijara, has shown she's a completely different fighter than the first time they fought. And Aspen, I can't necessarily say she's a completely different fighter, but it was good to see her that she does have another way to win. But man, Sijara's gotten her boxing, her striking has gotten completely leaps and bounds better since the first time they fought. So I think that's going to make for a closer fight. Look, Sijara Eubanks is a Lloyd Irvin black belt. She ain't no, look, let's just put it this way. This ain't Tanya Evinger and fucking Lena Landsberg. You know what I'm saying? Lena Landsberg, like, come on, man. That girl's like 40 years old. And then Tanya Evinger is like 40 years old. So
45.
Tanya Evinger, look, she was coming off like a horrific leg injury. She switched camps. The chick's done, man. That's why those two are actually fighting like next week after this one. They got 2 old.
We're only going to see one of them again afterwards.
Exactly. So I feel like this is definitely a step up in competition for Ladd in a spot where she kind of has a lot to lose in comparison to the other ones, man. The other ones are just kind of coming here and Evinger's a big win by name value, I guess, just because she's the former Invicta champ. So I guess she had something to gain off that, but what does she really have to gain here, man? I guess her ranking, she was going to fight Holly Holm. I bet you she would have, I'm not saying that she's not motivated, but...
Is this like an alleged punishment for missing weight or something?
She made weight her last fight.
Oh, so what the fuck are people talking about?
She made weight her last fight, and Sijara missed weight her last fight, so now...
Oh, no, that's what I'm talking about. Sijara missing weight.
Oh, is it? Let's see. We'll find out. But I actually don't see Aspen Ladd fully mounting Sijara Eubanks. We're talking a high-level black belt for several years, and it was actually Sijara taking Aspen down in their first fight. So. Aspen's going to have to find another way to win this fight, in my opinion. She's going to have to box and go head toe-to-toe inside the pocket for 3 rounds. So let's see if she does it. I don't think she's going to do it. I feel like people are overrating her as a prospect by these 2 wins. Yeah, she's fully mounted all these girls except Eubanks. But look, like I said, this ain't fucking Tanya Evinger. And look how Evinger came out in that fight. That shit was like the Stone Age soccer mom, soccer mom fighting that Sijara Eubanks is completely beyond, So just feel like there's a lot of value on it. Will she win? I can't say definitively, but I will pick her in the spot as an underdog. Just feel like from a betting perspective, man, you got at least a whole dollar, maybe $1 and some change in value, in this fight. But we'll see, man. Like I said, I don't think Aspen's going to fully mount her. So we're going to really see what Aspen's got in a spot where she's got a lot to lose.
Man, very interesting fight because like you just said, the way Aspen Ladd's been going out there and winning these fights, she gets on top of these girls, they don't get up, and then they get vicious ground and pound on their faces. But one thing about Evinger and Lena Landsberg is they're not black belts on the caliber of Sijara Eubanks. I mean, I know people got issue with Sijara's former coach, but the reality here is if you trace the lineage of that black belt, it's directly from the source. That's as legit as they get. So her black belt cannot be taken for granted. It cannot be underestimated.
With my boy Ricardo now, so
now she made the convenient switch to Ricardo Almeida, who also is a fucking legend. You know what I mean? So you remember when my boy Matt Hughes front headlocked Ricardo Almeida back in the day? UFC 117.
Remember when Ricardo Almeida and his team jumped Nate Marquardt and Pancrase and stomped his head in the mat?
You know what I'm saying? Giving y'all history lessons on half the battle, man. But look, it's going to be really interesting. I see it probably going the 3-round distance. Could be wrong, but I just don't think that, like I said, I don't think it's going to be as simple as Ladd just getting on top of her, and the fight will be over shortly after. I feel like Sijara can hip escape, get the half guard, get that full guard, get back up, attack off her back, things like that. So now I'm curious to see what's going to happen on the feet because one thing I got to say is I wasn't that impressed with Aspen Ladd on the feet her last few fights. I felt like she only really turned things as soon as she got on top of her opponent. So I kind of felt like there was a lot to be desired, but at the same time, I do feel like Sijara is a little bit undisciplined and she should be down a weight class. It's just that she, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's not out here eating Oreos and shit like my boy Juan Adams. But I just, from what I've seen, man, like when you get a title fight and you miss weight for it, like how does that work, man? Like that's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like you get that title fight, you do not miss weight for your title fight. That shows me unprofessionalism.
Is Aspen disciplined?
I mean, at least when she was eating cheeseburgers, she didn't even attempt to weigh in. You know what I'm saying, bro? But, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I do agree with Shaq that it should be lined a little bit closer, but I'll just go with the size of Aspen Ladd to win the decision here, even though size is not a skill. So we'll see what the fuck happens. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Davi Ramos. She's 9-2, and Austin Hubbard is 10-2. Currently, they got Davi Ramos minus 470. The comeback on Austin Hubbard is plus 375. Hey, much respect to Austin Hubbard for signing on the dotted line, for accepting this fight against Davi Ramos in his UFC debut. Now the question is, do you think the Colorado wrestler has what it takes to fend off one of the best submission artists in the history of the sport?
Austin Herbert's a nice kid. He trains at a good camp with Gaethje and the dihydroxy-LGD-4033 guy, Magny and Blades and all those guys. Comes from a good camp. Davi Ramos has been doing his thing. We know that he's one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the sport. Seems like he's getting better every fight. And, a lot of people think that Hubbard might be able to survive this jiu-jitsu storm. Like, you know what it takes to survive that jiu-jitsu storm? I mean, look, if Davi gets on your back with 3 minutes left in the round, the shit's over, bro. Gritsmacher escaped, but Gritsmacher's, 13-2. A lot of people sleep on Gritsmacher's skills. He's actually a fairly skilled fighter, man. And, Davi struggled in that fight, but, hey, he went through adversity, and he still got his rear naked choke right away in that third round. So that shows me the guy ain't no... one of these quitting Brazilians that's looking for, because he had every opportunity to do it in that fight. I know I had 7 units on him against Gritsmacher, and yeah, he was giving me a little sweat here and there, but he still finished him. So props to Davi. And, submit Nick Hind in the first round, very impressive. And Hubbard, I feel like Hubbard's going to be there for Davi to shoot on because he's not really the most aggressive guy out there, man. The guy's very calm. He likes to point fight. He's losing point fighting battles to guys like Eric Little Lee Wisely. He's getting tapped. Don't he get tapped out by some guy? What's the guy's name?
2016.
He got tapped out in 2016 by a guy that's not named Davi Ramos. Imagine if Davi Ramos, got that. So I feel like Davi Davi, he just needs to play it safe like how he's been doing. Come out here, take this kid down, and the fight will be over soon after.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'd be most worried if Austin Hubbard, had this big power standing or this or that, but the reality is he's a point fighter. I mean, it's fun to watch him fight. It took him until the 5th round to get a finish his last fight, and besides that, he doesn't finish any fights. I feel like not only have I seen the openings for Davi Ramos to get Austin Hubbard down, I mean, I see guys taking Austin Hubbard's back on the reg. I see guys taking him down on the reg. I see guys outworking him, and it's like, Joe Schmo might not be able to fucking choke you out, but I guarantee you, Davi Ramos takes your back. You don't even need both his hooks in, man. This shit will be over. This is gonna be a wrap, man. I mean, look, people are saying, oh, but if Austin just survives the first round, as if Davi's just gonna hand him the win on a silver platter in the second round, and that's just the most. I can't say the art. That's the most dumb thing I've ever heard, because it's like, when have you seen Davi Ramos quit? You didn't see the Serginho fight? The dude throws bombs, and we act like, people act like, oh, he's only got jiu-jitsu. I mean, have you seen the kind of bombs this guy throws on the feet? Obviously, I'd prefer for him to get it to the mat, but the guy, if Davi wants to come out here and test his stand-up against Austin Hubbard, I'm not convinced Austin's just going to jab his face off or anything like that, but, if I were to bet on Davi, I'd prefer just go out there, grab the leg, take him down, take his back, choke him out. So, no matter what, I see Davi Ramos choking out Austin Hubbard, and I mean, who else do you see going from a fucking Kimura attempt to a back take to a rear naked choke like he did against Nick Hein? Who else do you see that entry, that duck under to the back take against Gritzmacher to the rear naked choke? And these aren't just regular Mata Leon rear naked chokes. These are the kind where if you don't tap, yeah, you're going to go to sleep. But if you don't tap, your fucking neck is going to explode. You know what I'm saying? Your eyes are going to pop out of your head. I mean, this guy has a goddamn vice grip, and some of the best jiu-jitsu I've ever seen in the history of the sport. So I got Davi Ramos via submission here, and it's going to hopefully be submission of the night.
Davi's going to put on a nice jiu-jitsu show for the fans at Rochester.
The jiu-jitsu community is going to be talking about Davi Ramos on Sunday and Monday and the weeks following. And props to Austin Hubbard. Look, man, the guy's got balls taking this fight. He'll be back. I think he will actually go on to win a couple UFC fights, but it's time to get choked out here. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Charles do Bronx Oliveira. He's 26-8, and Nick the Carney Lentz is 39-2. Currently, they got Charles do Bronx Oliveira minus 355. The comeback on Nick the Carney Lentz is plus 295. Well, Shaq, you've seen these guys fight twice already, and it's funny because people are like, why is Charles Oliveira fighting Nick Lentz again? And I have a feeling that people asking that question never saw the first 2 fights, because the first fight, to this day, is one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life. I fucking love that first Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz fight. Like my boy Deontay Wilder always said, is Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz still one of your favorite fights, Dan? To this day. You know what I mean? That fight is fucking amazing. Then they run it back in the rematch in Brazil. Nick Lentz is sick. He's got Mike Dolce with him. You know what I'm saying? He can barely hang on. And they still get fight of the night. Now Nick Lentz got the chance to go up to 155 pounds. And he's been looking the best he ever has. Got that big upset over Scotty Holtzman. Do you think he has what it takes to go out there and win the trilogy against Charles do Bronx Oliveira?
Both these guys, man, are kind of very similar, man. They kind of been on similar paths. Charles probably kind of to a greater extent just because he's ranked inside the top 11 or 12, and Lentz is still on the outside looking in. But both these guys started at 55s. I mean, both these guys been around for a long time. We're talking about, like, Charles got wins over, Ephraim back in the day. Like, remember how long ago that was? Nick Lentz beat Tyson Griffin back in the day. Like, they've been around for that long, and to see him still doing good is very impressive, man. Lentz has quietly gone, 14-6 in the UFC. Charles, I mean, the most submissions, the most performance bonuses in the UFC history. So both these guys are what we like to call mini legends. Charles might get into the Hall of Fame, man, if he keeps getting all these subs, man. The greatest submission artist the sport has ever seen. So as far as how they match up, in the first fight, like you said, a lot of people are under the assumption that, Charles is about to come out here, one takedown, and that's going to be it, which it could be. I mean, his jiu-jitsu is that good. I mean, if Lentz makes a mistake and he gets his back, I mean, that could be it, 100%. But, I mean, he's shown in these 2 fights that Lentz is actually willing to go in his guard, and he's actually, kind of out-grappled him in a sense, man. In that second fight, in the second round, man, he was all up in his guard, passing from, full guard to side control. I mean, Lentz was playing with fire, and he was doing pretty well. But eventually, Charles got that dangle, and that was it, man. But like you said, Lentz was with that fraud Mike Dolce, If y'all don't know Mike Dolce, man, that guy, God have mercy. He likes to make guys cut like 30 pounds the day before the fight and then come in like super bloated. And, it worked for a stretch of time, but then it didn't work, and then no one uses him anymore except Mirsad Bektik, actually.
Except that fraud Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey. But so I feel like Lentz, if there is a guy that's, not necessarily over when they hit the mat with Charles, I feel like Lentz could kind of fall into that category, even though he's been submitted twice. But I do feel like Lentz could have better success in the grappling compared to a Jim Miller, Clay Guida,
Christos Giagos.
Tamor, Christos Giagos. What was actually surprising about that fight is, Christos actually stuffed a lot of his takedowns. And Charles, I feel like a lot of people are under the assumption that, Charles, his stand-up's gotten a lot better. Yeah, his stand-up's gotten a lot better, but we have to say to an extent after, because he still shows signs where you hit this guy one good time on the chin, he might, or in the stomach, he might flop to his back. And, his last fight in Brazil, let's just put it this way. Yeah, he won that fight fair and square, but there were some moments, let's just put, if they weren't in Brazil, if they were in Vegas, he would have had to fight a little sooner. That point probably wouldn't have been taken, even though Tamor did dig in there with that eye poke. And my boy Nick Lentz knows about Tamor's eye pokes as well. As his weasel tactics didn't work that night. But man, it's gonna, I feel like Charles can still show signs of looking for ways out, like old Charles. And I know Lentz doesn't have that issue, so I do feel like it's lined a little bit too wide. I feel like Nick Lentz, although he, has gotten a lot older over the years, man, he's still evolving. His stand-up has gotten a lot better. I mean, you take a look at his last fight, Scott Holtzman, a lot of people were counting him out in that fight. Holtzman was looking the best he ever has. Look at Holtzman. He's a hockey player. He's big. He's strong. He's got knockout power. That was a real test to see how far Lentz's stand-up has come. And, I mean, he was catching Holtzman with high kicks. He was switching his stance. His boxing looked better. He definitely completely gassed out in the third round, but Holtzman's a big motherfucker, man. So I feel like Lentz is actually, I don't want to say shown more improvement, but I feel like it's more real improvement. I feel like Charles can resort back to some of his old tendencies if you push him, And, man, I feel like it could be lined a little closer. I feel like if you bet Charles, you're about to be in for a little scare because, not another thing we haven't mentioned is Charles has been tapped out too. And by what, those 2 times?
Guillotines.
Who's got a really good guillotine? Nick Lentz. But Charles has been in that guillotine a couple times. He knows what it's like. So, I'm a pick Charles in this fight, but from a betting perspective, it's a Nick Lentz or pass because when you got a big payout, at least you got a guy who's familiar with it, who's been in there 2 times, not a Tamor who we don't know about his grappling, not a Christos Giagos, not a Jim Miller, Clay Guida who's been tapped out 10 times.
Who lost a round to BJ Penn.
Lost a round to BJ Penn. So Charles Oliveira's little streak here is kind of inflated. I feel like Lentz has had a tougher path, little recently.
He did kind of beat Gray Maynard though.
Yeah, he fucking Gray Maynard up. But, I'm saying, he fought Islam. He fought fucking Holtzman. He fought fucking Tamor. And Tamor got away with his weasel tactics.
Charles fought Tamor, too.
Yeah. He fought him in Brazil, man. Fucking, that fight shouldn't have been stopped. Like, Charles, after the first eye poke, then they exchange again, and then Charles is like, but I'm going to pick Charles. I feel like it's going to be hard for Lentz. With all that being said, I feel like it's going to be hard for Lentz to not make that one mistake because like we saw in the second fight, even after a dominant second round that Nick Lentz had, he came out there, left his neck in there for just a little second, and Charles pulled off a dangle, man. So you got to be on your P's and Q's, but I feel like it could get sketchy. But I'm going to take Charles by 3rd round submission.
It's a great fight, man. I'm really excited for it. Like I already said, their first 2 fights were fight of the night. I don't think that this one's going to be any exception. Maybe this one's going to be submission of the night, but bottom line, I feel like Nick Lentz is super underrated most of the time. People have some impression that he's on his way out or this or that, and I kind of disagree. I mean, I know that he kind of has had a long career, but I feel like he's a bit rejuvenated since he moved up to 55. So I felt like that cut to 45 took so much out of him. And since he moved up, I mean, you saw him finish Will Brooks. You saw him beat Scotty. So the knockout of Gray Maynard, I know it's great, but hey, he handled him accordingly. You saw my boy Nick Lentz go out there with a head kick knockout. How often do you see that, right? So it's good to see Nick Lentz performing to the best of his abilities these days. And with Charles do Bronx Oliveira, I got to give him a lot of credit too, because you guys know how suspect he is at times where, faking injuries in fights. And if he can't get his initial submission, you'll cover up, let you pound him out. You attack him with a sub, you'll tap right away. But man, I feel like he has been making improvements. You know, you could say, well, he hasn't really been pushed, but man, in that Tamor fight, there were definitely spots where Charles could have packed it in and been like, you know what, live to fight another day. Those eye pokes were deep into the eye socket. I mean, Tamor's a dirty Euro, man. Like, that shit was like, oh my God, bro. Like, could you believe, like, the extent? So, Charles looked a lot better on the feet his last fight. That's something that you can tell he's been working on. It's just about what's going to happen when he gets into that back and forth fight again. This could be that spot. But somewhere along the way, I do think that Charles gets the sub. But it's interesting because Nick knows him very well. Nick's been in there with him twice. Nick could have the right game plan to come out here and beat this guy. And the reason you can't ever bet the house on a guy like Charles Oliveira is because he is a habitual stunt puller. He's also got the most subs in UFC history, so he might go out there, add to that list, and just continue his record. The guy is that much of a badass, and that's on his best day, but on his worst day, it's catastrophic stunts. It's like, oh my God, Charles, you know what I mean? So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira to submit Nick Lentz for the third time here. Hey guys, Dan here. Just wanted to remind you that Kyle Marley's bets are available at bestfightpicks.com. As you guys already know, in the midst of that 200 unit run, 1 unit equals $100 for Kyle Marley. So at UFC Ottawa alone, he goes out there and has a 28 unit win on the event. Now just think about this for a second. He's charging $7.99 for his yearly package. He just won 28 units at UFC Ottawa. 28 units, that's $2.8K. You pay off the yearly package with that event alone, and you still have $2K left over. You let me know if that's worth it or not. He's got monthly packages, yearly, or the event itself, all available at bestfightpicks.com. Kyle Marley's bets, make sure you tail them, bestfightpicks.com. Next up in the welterweight division, we got Vicente, the silent assassin Luque. He's 15-6, and Derrick Krantz is 24-10. Currently, they got Vicente Luque minus 700. The comeback on Derrick Krantz is plus 500. Shaq, I know you remember Derrick Krantz from Fightville. I mean, talk about a guy that's paid his dues. The only thing that sucks is he's getting rewarded with a canvas snap.
We'll just keep this one short and quick. I'm glad to see my boy D-Rock in the UFC. He paid his dues, 24-10. Like you said, he was in Fightville. He's taken some naps to Koreshkov. I know you remember that nap in Bellator, but the guy at least earned his spot to enough to get a contender series. So we got a lot of respect for my boy Derrick Krantz. But unfortunately, I mean, he should honestly, like, after this, they should let him and Magny just run it in the back because, unfortunately, Krantz has to take the fall for what Magny did for taking dihydroxy-LGD-4033. You know, unfortunately, Krantz has to take the fall for that. So.
Matt Magny's out here injecting needles in his ass, and Derrick Krantz has to get KO'd. It's like, I'm gonna send my boy Derrick Krantz a gift basket.
I just hope that Krantz. Look, if you go down to the mat, don't try to fight back. Don't try to get back up. Don't try to fight. Just come in here, take your nap, or take a knee. Just let's limit the damage you take in here, and come back for a better fight. You know.
Yeah, maybe they could do D-Rock Krantz versus BJ Penn or some shit. You know what I'm saying? But look, Vicente Luque is an unbelievable fighter, especially now. He's really come a long way, and the dude, that left hook is so nasty. I mean, he was landing knockout blows on Barberena's chin, and for whatever reason, Barberena wouldn't go down to that third round until he had to start getting the knees involved. The left hook that puts everyone else down, the left hook that put Nico Bryce, Bilal, all these other guys down, it wasn't good enough to put Barb's insane chin down, so we had to resort to the knees. I mean, on the mat, I mean, talk about serious jiu-jitsu. I mean, this guy Vicente Luque, after he landed all those knockout blows on Barberena's chin, then it was Barberena's turn to answer back. He drops Vicente Luque, and it's like, at that point, you could have been like, holy shit, like Vicente's about to pull a stunt. Well, 2 seconds later, Vicente takes his back and almost chokes him out. So I'm very impressed with Vicente Luque. I think he's a top 10 guy right now, and I got so much respect for Krantz. He will be back, but I just hope it's not too vicious, man. Because you remember the last time someone took a short notice fight against Vicente. You remember what happened to Jalen Turner? I just hope this isn't that situation. I hope it's an early stoppage. You know what I mean? Let's just leave it at that.
One knockdown and let's stop it.
Exactly. Let's intervene, ref. Please do not let Dan Mergliata ref this fight. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Megan Anderson. She's 8-3, and Felicia Spencer is 6-0. Currently, they got Megan Anderson minus 175. The comeback on Felicia Spencer is plus 155. Shaq, you running to the window to lay this minus 175 on Megan Anderson?
Look, I get it. She's hot, but like y'all know, this girl got finished by Cindy Dandois, right? That's all I'm gonna say. Look, you get finished by Cindy Dandois. I don't know if y'all seen Cindy fight before, but it's a sight to see. But Felicia Spencer,
real quick, y'all gotta go watch my girl Cindy Dandois versus what was the fight? Alexis Davis in Nashville. Yeah. Y'all gotta see Cindy Dandois versus Alexis Davis. Thank me later.
Megan got finished by that girl. So after you go watch, that's the girl you're paying minus 175 for. But yeah, I mean, look, Megan's got the experience for sure. I've always said that if she figures things out, she's got a great frame. She's 6 foot. She's big. I mean, she's got good coaches. She trains with Krause and them. So, I mean, the thing is, it's kind of still hard to say where she's really at because, you know, the Zingano fight only lasted about a minute. And then the Holly Holm fight, you know, that was a stunning. And quite honest, she wasn't ready for that, man. She's coming in from Invicta to fight Holly Holm, who's number 1, 2, you know, in the world. She belongs nowhere in the cage with her. So it's still kind of hard, in my opinion, to gauge where Megan's at. I feel like if you're betting on her as a favorite, it's kind of more of a projection. Yeah, I feel like she does have potential with that big, long frame, but still, who knows, man? Like, I feel like it's a little sketchy, man. Spencer's got the clear path to victory with the wrestling. I mean, we saw Holly Holm take down Anderson very easily. I don't know, man. I feel like a betting perspective, it's dog or pass. So I'm gonna go with Felicia Spencer, man. I think I just feel like how can you be so confident on Megan, man? She's only fought like 2 times in the last 3 years. Like I said, the last fight was really short. Katzengano's on her way out. Katzengano, I mean, look, Katzengano turns like when she moves, she turns like sideways. So that's the reason why that toe got in her eye. I mean, it's a KO in my book for sure, but we still don't know enough about Megan, man. So I'm going to go with the dog here. I'm going to go with Spencer via wrestling, via ugly fight. You know, like I said, minus 175 on a girl that lost to Cindy Dandois. But Spencer's not that impressive. I just feel like she's got the wrestling, the path to victory. So I'll go with her.
Yeah, she definitely does have the path to victory with the wrestling. But, you know, this ain't no Kayla Harrison or... Not that Kayla's, you know, but I got Kayla over Megan easily, like easily. But, you know, this ain't no credential, this or that, D1. I mean, she's allegedly a black belt, but I see her going for takedown. She can't get it. She flops to her back. So it's going to be interesting. How much has Megan Anderson progressed? That's the real question here. Has she learned from that Holly Holm fight? You know, has she addressed her mistakes? Put that work in on the mat, or is she one of those people that only trains for striking, thinks that going to the ground is, you know, does she have that Melender opinion of the ground game? I really don't know. She's definitely a head case. I mean, she's out there calling out reporters and shit. It's like, what are you doing? Go focus on your fight. Like, but, man, that size advantage, 6'1". I kind of have this impression or this feeling that Felicia might kind of be a soccer mom. You know, she might be along the lines, maybe a little bit better than a Peggy Morgan or a Jessamine Duke, but not that much. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Megan Anderson to win this fight. But is it going to surprise me if Felicia is actually better than I think she is and goes out there and wrestles someone with zero wrestling? No, it's not. But I think that Sean and Mick kind of gauged where Megan was at. They realized they didn't have anyone on the roster that she could probably beat fair and square. So they called someone up from Invicta, come in, take this L, because when Megan does win fights, she tends to finish these girls. You know, she's 6'1", she's got that massive frame, and, you know, girls aren't used to going against chicks that size. So, listen, I have no idea what's going to happen in this fight. I'm not even going to bullshit you guys, but I'm going to pick Megan Anderson to win this one. Co-main event of the evening in the middleweight division. Shit's about to get real, Shaq, because we got the return of Antonio Carlos Jr. He's 10-2, and he's taking on Ian Heinisch, who is 12-1. Currently, they got Antonio Carlos Jr. minus 165. The comeback on Ian Heinisch is plus 145. Well, Shaq, you already know Antonio Carlos Jr., one of the best black belts in the UFC middleweight division, but Ian Heinisch takes his UFC debut on short notice against another black belt, a third-degree black belt in Cesar Mutanchi in Argentina, goes out there and wins the decision. So, Shaq, I got to know, who you got, Carlos Jr. or Heinisch?
Yeah, it's a good fight. I'm glad to see Heinisch getting this push, man. For your second UFC fight, getting a top 15 guy. When you beat Cesar Ferreira 30-27.
When you beat a man in a stare down and he never hear from him ever again.
2-0 actually, man. He beat Tom Breeze on that stare down. Anyone heard from Tom since?
You got knocked out on the stage.
He and broke him backstage. So, anyways, yeah, Carlos Jr. been doing this thing. Like you said, great black belts. Got the wins over Vittori, Tim Bosch, Marshman, Spicely. So yeah, he's definitely been doing his thing. But has he really been tested to the extent that he's about to get tested? In my opinion, not really, man. Those fights have kind of been breeze-bys. Marshman's got no ground game. Marshman's about to get smoked here in a few weeks against my boy Edmund Shabazian. Then you got Tim Bosch. How many times has Tim been submitted for me? Over 5, 6, 7, 8?
How old is Tim?
Tim's been tapped out several times, and Tim comes in for his, 80 and 80, 80 plus the 20, that's 100. He comes in for his 100, once a year, man. He's got to get paid. And then, the Vittori fight was a good fight. It was back and forth. Vittori had a good second round. Carlos Jr. controlled him with his jiu-jitsu the first and third rounds. But, to say that Carlos Jr. is going to get on top of Ian and that's going to be it, I disagree 100%, man. I feel like Heinisch has got a lot of experience against black belts. Yeah, he got tapped out by Maluco Perez. But, let's be honest here. I know Carlos Jr. is a way higher level black belt than Maluco, but he's not going to attempt a move like that. You know what I'm saying? That's why they call him Maluco. He's a nut job, man. He goes for these crazy submissions. And I just don't feel like Carlos Jr. is going to try that particular type move. So then he fights... He's fought Checo, who's a black belt. He fought Daniel Madrid, another black belt on the local scene. And he had the Cesar Mutanch fight, a third-degree black belt, and now he's fighting another black belt. So this guy's got experience against black belts. I feel like his wrestling is very good to counter these black belts. And I feel like he's got the stand-up advantage in this particular fight. I know Carlos Jr. feels like he's feeling comfortable in his boxing these days, man. He's feeling, he's jabbing, he's moving, he's dropping his hands. He's feeling real comfortable out there. And that's granted to the work he's been putting in, man, at ATT. From this fight with Dan Kelly, which was an embarrassment. To go ahead and tell him what Kelly said about him, man. He was making girl sounds out there. And look, his jiu-jitsu storm didn't work, and he gassed out, and he tired out, and Kelly broke him in the second and third round, man, and finished him. So I feel like that is how you're going to see Carlos Jr. lose fights. He lost to Pat Cummins in he didn't really jiu-jitsu storm him, but he was at heavyweight, 205 back then. But I feel like Carlos Jr. is also another inflated prospect in a sense. I feel like, I don't want to say I respect his resume. I respect the guys he's beaten, but a lot of those guys, man, just aren't on Ian's level, in my opinion. I feel like this is going to be one of his tougher fights. When we talk about Ian, we're talking a guy with that background. Mentally, he is already willing to go to a place where not too many men are willing to go. So I feel like Carlos Jr. is going to come out here try to take Ian down, use a lot of energy. I feel like he might get him down. Cesar did take him, but we know Cesar's got one of the best blast doubles in the middleweight division. He hits everyone with that blast double. But I feel like Ian's got the jiu-jitsu to at least survive on Carlos Jr. enough for him to get back up to the feet. And when they get back up to the feet, I feel like Carlos Jr. has, I don't want to say a misconception that he can box, but I feel like, against the opponents he's been fighting, yeah, he'll do good there, but I feel like Heinisch is a guy that uses his feints, his fakes, his footwork. He's got good cardio. He's just well-rounded. He's a dog. I feel like if he makes this a dog fight, I feel like you're going to see the Brazilian get tired. I feel like you're going to see the Brazilian gas. I feel like you're going to see the Brazilian hit the Novo União state. And then I feel like the Brazilian's going to start looking for ways out. I feel like Heinisch is going to break him with his volume, just his pace, his tenacity, and get this upset win.
Yeah, this is going to be a very exciting fight. Obviously, you got to respect the jiu-jitsu credentials of Antonio Carlos Jr. The guy... He tends to finish fights when he gets guys' backs. Didn't finish my boy Dan Kelly. Didn't finish Vittori. But look, when he goes out there and he gets that back take, it's a very dangerous spot. But one thing about Ian Heinisch is, well, I have proof that he can survive against a high-level black belt. And, people are out here saying that Carlos Jr. is better than Mutanch. And, maybe we can debate that another time. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But one thing you cannot debate is the resumes of Antonio Carlos Jr. and Mutanch. One guy finished Jack Hermanson. One guy finished fucking Thiago Santos, beat Anthony Smith, beat all these guys. And, Carlos Jr., props to him. He beat, he goes out there, he beat Tim Bosch and Jack Marshman, and people are acting like he's the top prospect. at 185 pounds. Look, all I gotta say is no guy that was making lady sounds against Dan Kelly is gonna beat Ian Heinisch in a battle of wills. If he goes out there and finishes him in the first round via submission, much respect to him. But I feel like Ian Heinisch, he's got good submission defense. I got proof that he can defend subs against high-level black belts. And when they get back up to their feet, if Carlos Jr. thinks that his boxing that worked against Leleco and all these guys is going to work here, he's going to be in for another thing when Ian starts feinting, starts getting that pressure game going. And I think by the late second or third round, I see Ian Heinisch getting a TKO here because this guy is as tough as they come. It's all about not succumbing to that first round rear naked choke. Look, if he does, props to Carlos Jr. I got Ian Heinisch to weather that early storm, take over late, and break the guy. So I'm going with Ian Heinisch to get the biggest win of his career once again. Main event of the evening in the welterweight division. We got Rafael dos Anjos, the former UFC lightweight champion. He's 28-11, and Kevin the Motown Phenom Lee is 17-4. Currently, they got Rafael dos Anjos minus 115. The comeback on Kevin Lee is minus 105. Well, Shaq, a lot of people are saying that we saw Rafael lose to Kamaru, the current champ, and Colby, the interim champ. They're both wrestlers. Therefore, Kevin's just going to come out here and wrestle. And let me ask you something. Does Kevin have anywhere remotely near the same style of wrestling as Kamaru and Colby? Is he a pressure wrestler or is he a back taker?
Like you just said, that's the big misconception here. Rafael definitely lost his last two fights, and he lost them fairly handedly. One thing about in those fights, man, Rafael never really wilted, though. Like, you can't say he honestly wilted and just accepted it, man. He fought. He got up third, fourth rounds, fifth rounds. Like,
took down Colby fourth round twice.
Like, the dude does not give up, man. So to just think he's going to come out here and accept a takedown, like, I think you're definitely mistaken. And Kevin Lee, like you said, he's a back taker, man. He's not a guy like Colby and Usman. We're talking one of the best D2 wrestlers, and then we're talking a Pac-10 Division 1 champion.
Real quick, when you say D2 for Usman, you got to clarify that he's out there beating D1 guys.
Yeah, he's a D2 guy, but
Because they're going to be like, well, Kevin's D2 also.
One of the best, but yeah, you're talking a guy that went to the Olympic Training Center, beat world team members, this and that. So yeah, and then Kevin Lee, man, he's more of a back taker. He likes to slam guys, take that back, and then start smashing their heads in. If he can get them flattened out, he'll get his rear naked choke or just smash them. You mean to tell me this guy's about to come out here and take Rafael dos Anjos' back? Is that what you're saying? Rafael's back? We're talking a second degree black belt. I mean, guy's been a black belt like since he was a teenager, I think, like 18.
I'll just say this. If Kevin Lee submits Rafael dos Anjos, he's going to get promoted on the spot.
Exactly. So if you're relying on this guy to come out here and take it back, I feel like he's going to have to switch his grappling style up and try to control Rafael on the cage and try to do what Colby and Usman did, which is, be grimy, just use that typical D1 wrestler stuff, man. I feel like he's going to have to switch it up. He's more of a back taker, like you said. So, I feel like Kevin's issue is, at least in his fight with Iaquinta, is when he did get Iaquinta and he did take that back, the second they get back up to the feet, he's so tired. And Kevin's not like Colby. Colby's a guy that, even though he doesn't have the best stand-up, he's just constantly moving forward, constantly just throwing pitter-patter, constantly just walking forward. Rafael never got a chance to set his feet. Usman, kind of the similar thing, but just a little more physical, more African, you know what I'm saying? He's got way more muscles. He just bullies him a little bit more. Kevin's definitely big. He's got the muscles. I expect him to be feeling a lot better at 170. But when they get back out in space, man, Usman and Colby, man, these guys keep it grimy. They keep it close. They keep it a smothering type of fight. As where Kevin, when he gets back out in space, he starts being stiff. He starts, he really doesn't have a good poker face, man. You hit Kevin Lee really good on that chin, he might not get knocked out, but man, he'll start showing signs of determinant, man. And we saw that in the Iaquinta fight, man. He looked broken at the end of that fight. So, I feel like if Dos Anjos, I expect him to get taken down. The big thing with Dos Anjos in this fight is not to put too much on those last two fights, because there also could be a chance where after those last two fights that it becomes a reoccurring thing, that he's always stuffing takedowns against wrestlers. And, like I said, I personally don't think Kevin's got that type of grappling style. Rafael, I don't even think he's the oldest guy. I still feel like he's got the heart. I still feel like he's got the motivation. I definitely agree that he's on the tail end of his career 100%. I just feel like this is one of those cases where, I feel like it's a pick'em just because people are saying Rafael's done, and that could definitely be the case, man. But when a guy's done, man, what I've been noticing lately is sometimes, man, there's just a different level of fighter. Yeah, Rafael's done, but man, he reached a status where Kevin Lee has never achieved.
He's not Condit
exactly.
done.
He's not Condit done. Like not any guys are just about to come up in here and start whooping his ass. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about the champion and the number one contender. Like Kevin Lee at 55, in my opinion, yeah, he was ranked number 4 when he fought Al. But when we really think about it, who you got between Kevin Lee and Justin Gaethje? Come on. Who you got between them? We already saw him fight Tony. He gassed out real quick in the first round and got tapped out when he tried to use a traditional grappling style, and he went in his guard. And then I mean, he got that title shot coming off a win against Michael Chiesa. Like, Michael Chiesa's a nice kid, but, like, come on, he'll never sniff a title shot in his life. And then we're talking, before that, he fought Trinaldo, will never sniff a title shot in his life. Trinaldo's outside of the rankings.
Look, Kevin Lee's been beating good fighters. Rafael's beating great fighters.
Exactly. So I feel like Rafael should be favored here, just a little more than what they got it. But, I understand. I mean, the guy is on the tail end of his career, so there's definitely that angle. But I'm going to go with Rafael here. I feel like he is going to get up from the takedown, and I feel that when they get back in space, you're going to get to finally see Rafael for the first time in a year let go of that vicious body kick, that vicious left hand, the jump knees, the low kicks, and you're going to see Kevin continue his tendencies of not being able to box with these guys, man. This guy's very chinny. Maybe at 170 he feels a lot better. Who knows? There's definitely a chance. But I got to go with Dos Anjos. I feel like he's the more complete fighter, the more accomplished fighter, the guy that's seen the higher level of competition, the guy this is a step down from Colby and Usman in my opinion. But I feel Robbie Lawler,
Cowboy.
These guys are just way bigger, man. I feel like Kevin Lee's just got to. I know he definitely earned his spot, but I feel like he kind of got to the spot at a time where where we had McGregor out. I feel like Kevin Lee was talking a lot. He's a funny guy, and I feel like he got that. He had the pink jumpsuit on, and he told Tony, "I'm gonna fuck you up, Tony." He had the good shit with him on Fox Sports 1 after he beat Chiesa that night, So I feel like he's also very inflated, man, but. I'm going to go with Dos Anjos by 3rd round TKO. I feel like Kevin Lee's going to start strong, but I feel like the similar thing's going to happen. I feel like he's going to get blasted out when they get back in space, and Rafael's going to do his thing and, get on the cage and cry, bring the kids in the cage, and, I hope I don't want to tell him to retire because I do feel like he could still beat some guys, especially if he still wins, but, I feel like Rafael should go out on good terms while he can.
Yeah, look, when this fight was initially matched up, I was like, oh, Kevin Lee's just going to come out here, wrestle him. It's that simple, shot, right? And then you actually go back and you watch the tape and you see Kevin Lee's last fight against the guy that got finished by Mitch Clark. And let me ask you guys something that are comparing this to Kamaru and Colby real quick. So you guys know Kamaru and Colby are cardio machines, right? And they get better as the fights go on. Well, how come Kevin Lee was losing the championship rounds against the guy that got finished by Mitch Clark, and you're telling me that he's going to go out here and do the same thing that Kamaru and Colby did? That sounds kind of dumb to me because, first of all, let's not even talk about, from our perspective, go look at the numbers. Kevin doesn't shoot anywhere near as many takedowns as Kamaru or Colby. He does not have anywhere near the work rate of those guys. Not to mention, he's not a pressure wrestler. He's a back taker. He wants to stand a little bit on the feet. I mean, it's a mismatch on the feet. Kevin's out here getting rocked by Efrain Escudero. You want to tell me that
Leo Santos.
And he got knocked out by Leo Santos. You want to fucking tell me that he's going to go out here and outstrike RDA? Yeah, right. I mean, unless RDA is so done, which I don't think he is. I mean, he got back up from Kamaru, who's the current champ. He got back up from Colby, who's the interim champ. He took down Colby twice in the 4th round, which means that after, getting weared on by the D1, what is it, Pac-10, all that shit, by getting wear down by one of the best wrestlers in the history of the sport, he was still fresh enough to take him down in the 4th round. The 4th round, the round where Kevin Lee is going out there losing to Ally Quinta. You know what I'm saying? So I think RDA has got a big cardio advantage in the spot. I think he's got a big striking advantage in the spot. I think he's got a big jiu-jitsu advantage in the spot. It just comes down to the wrestling. Now, early in the fight, maybe there's a chance that Kevin Lee takes the back of the 2nd-degree black belt, and if he does, I mean, oh, that's awesome, Kevin, but if he goes out here, look, if you choke out Rafael Dos Anjos, I'll get on fucking Twitter and high five, clap, maybe even send you something to your PayPal. Dude, he is not about to come out here and submit Rafael Dos Anjos. But if he does, Much respect, dude. Like, I will definitely give you the credit you deserve if you go out there and do that. So I'm wondering, okay, so are you telling me if he doesn't get that first round sub that he's just going to come out here, take his back every single round, go out there and win the decision? Like, they think because he beat Edson Barboza, who was coming off the Khabib beatdown, that all of a sudden he's going to beat Rafael dos Anjos. Like, guys, what you need to understand about this is Kevin Lee's beat good fighters. So Trinaldo, good fighter. Edson Barboza, good fighter. Magomed Mustafayev, good fighter. Chiesa, good fighter. RDA's beating great fighters. Robbie Lawler, great fighter. Cerrone, great fighter. Benson Henderson, great fighter. Pettis at the time, great fighter. Diaz, great fighter. So, I mean, the resumes don't even compare. It's just about if Rafael suddenly aged overnight. But I just saw him against the two champs in the division. And, I mean, for being so outsized, I thought he performed pretty admirably. Whereas when you see Kevin Lee losing these fights, I mean, Kevin Lee's a head case, first of all. The Leo Santos fight, which was a great stoppage, he says was an early stoppage. The Iaquinta fight, which he clearly lost, he says he clearly won. I'm like, dude, like, just accept the losses and move on. Every single time he takes an L, there's always an excuse behind it. And every time he has a win, his head completely explodes. So the guy's a head case. If he wins here, it's because of his physicality, but I just don't think he's got the cardio to push for all 5 rounds. So for that reason, I'm going Rafael dos Anjos to be a 4th round TKO. Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Rochester?
My fight to watch is going to be Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira 3, man. You know, how could it not be? You know, I feel like there's going to be some good scrambles in there. I feel like Lentz is getting a little better. Charles has got a lot better. So we're going to get to see, man. Charles has got to hold on to this top 15 spot. And if Lentz can come out here and get this win, this is like the breakthrough of his career, you know, if he gets this win. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, the first 2 times that these two fought were fight of the night. I don't expect this to be any differently. I will definitely be tuning into Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz. For me, my fight to watch is Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Ian Heinisch. People are saying that the guy that beat Tim Bush and Jack Marshman is the top prospect at 185 pounds. Well, now he's taking on a guy who just beat another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And, man, it's so intriguing because either Carlos Jr. is going to submit him in the first round or Heinisch is going to break him late. So for that reason, Carlos Jr. versus Heinisch is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Rochester?
My fighter to watch is going to be Rafael dos Anjos. We're talking about the first Brazilian UFC lightweight champ. A lot of people are saying he's old. A lot of people are saying he's done. A lot of people are saying he's on his way out. I disagree. I feel like, you know, just because he doesn't, you know, have the greatest personality, doesn't really talk, he's really quiet. Yeah, it's always been the case. But, I mean, I feel like he's one of the best lightweights to ever compete inside the UFC. The guy went up to welterweight, got a couple wins. So I feel like if he gets this win, a couple more wins, goes out on good terms, we could possibly be talking about a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, Rafael dos Anjos is definitely one of the fighters to watch, man. For me, my fighter to watch is Davi. I mean, when I say things like this guy might literally have the best jiu-jitsu in lightweight history, I mean, those are some big words. We're talking about BJ Penn back in the day. We're talking about guys like, we're talking about Gilbert Durinho Burns, who, by the way, Davi Ramos submitted in a jiu-jitsu competition. Carlos Diego Ferreira, even Damian Maia up at welterweight. These are some of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys to ever compete inside the octagon. I think Davi Ramos is right up there. I think he might even be better. I think he does some very spectacular shit when fights hit the mat, and I don't think it's going to be an exception here against Austin Hubbard. So for that reason, Davi Ramos is my fighter to watch. Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday in Rochester, New York. Hopefully no crazy decisions on these scorecards. Hopefully no one gets pulled out the fight day of because of this fucking athletic commission for chap lips, you know what I'm saying? So, man, thank you so much to all the fans for all your support. We love you guys so much. You can follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. You can follow me at Best Fight Picks. You can get our plays at bestfightpicks.com. Been on the underdogs all year. And plan to keep that going this weekend as well. BestFightPicks.com for that. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and Spotify. Our Instagram, Best Fight Picks Official. Thank you guys again very much. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.